Elden Ring is a terrific RPG, there's no denying that. Traveling the lands between, battling demigods and monsters, and rising into something of significance has never been told in such a breathtaking way. However, it was a lonesome journey, the only companions gained being the summons you get and the NPCs you meet along the way. Yet we're told we aren't the only tarnished on the quest. In fact, we eventually make it to the round table where we meet a group of them both working together and competing with one another. This had me thinking, wow, Elden Ring would actually be such a great MMO. Over the last many years, I've played a large variety of MMORPGs, from brief stints in older MMOs like WoW, to Star Wars The Old Republic and Elder Scrolls Online, to more recent ones like New World and Lost Ark. In fact, the last two have really helped me reinvigorate my love for the genre, and I've been more and more down that rabbit hole. So playing both a couple of MMOs and Elden Ring at the same time only furthered my thought of Elden Ring being a great MMO, and I wanted to discuss the topic, which is ultimately what an MMO needs to be good, but have it focused on Elden Ring. I know it will never happen, but I thought it'd be fun as a conversation to have, because I truly believe that a game like Elden Ring, with its combat and lore and scenery and story and just everything, could be the greatest MMO ever. Before we get into talking about Elden Ring, let's lay down a few important things. What constitutes an MMO? Is it just a game that has a lot of multiplayer? Does it require certain content? A bit of both? Yeah, first things first. MMOs over the years have definitely developed a meta for how the genre works. Players want to start at a low level and progress through quests and dungeons to high levels with other players. Obviously solo content is available, but the main drive is to experience content with friends. This content that you experience expands past the simple leveling into tradable economy, social events, guilds, and late game content and more. I think guilds and late game content are the major factors for playing with other players here. Personally, I want a group that we can build up prestige with, do fun events with, and hard dungeons with, and maybe even do large scale PvP with. I really like New World for this aspect. MMOs need to pay attention to the social side, so having systems built in for it are important. MMOs typically end up as chat rooms first and games second. Beyond the multiplayer side, players typically want in-depth systems with crafting and looting, or even honing like Lost Ark. And I think it's safe to say good stories and lore are incredibly important in MMOs to keep players invested in what they are progressing through. MMOs that do this well, like Star Wars The Old Republic and Elder Scrolls Online, have built core fans that follow the game for this reason that during the game's rough years help it stay afloat. Compare that to a New World, whose lore I love, but isn't as prevalent, and you end up losing a lot of that core PvE base. Obviously, I could go on and on about what constitutes an MMO, and I think every person has a slightly different definition of that, so we'll end this portion there. So, Elden Ring. What does it have already that fits in an MMO? The obvious one, on my last point on MMOs, is that it has a phenomenal lore and story. It's enthralling, traveling the lands between and learning of the stories of these gods and demigods and how the world has been affected. And because From Software made it into an open world, it's told in a way that's very similar to MMOs in my opinion. The setting is impacted by the players, a core aspect that MMOs try to do, and the in-depth combat system is something that MMOs aim to do that Elden Ring does so well. The action combat systems in MMO have grown more and more popular over the last few years with games like Terra, Black Desert Online, and New World. An Elden Ring type combat system in the MMO would be a natural progression from these. With all this understood, what would an Elden Ring MMO look like? First, the multiplayer system could have so many routes. Within the story, you have all these Tarnished competing to get the Great Runes and become Elden Lord. So all the players would be Tarnished doing this. You could have guilds based around competing factions, maybe even the PvP system to fight over the dominance of runes with guild wars. Guilds could inhabit and live in areas like castles and forts and cities. Like, imagine Elden Ring, but one guild controlled Stormvale and another controlled the Academy, and they constantly fought turf wars with one another. There's honestly endless possibilities with guild homes, PvP, and story elements fighting over the runes. There'd also be a reform on the player economy. Right now, loot is based on runes to purchase items or to go get guaranteed boss drops. The loot drop system would have to be re-implemented with maybe a honing system like Lost Ark or a crafting system to make gear instead of these guaranteed drops, but that's a minor issue. And lastly, for the combat and late game content, the combat would need some fixing up in terms of PvE, as right now mobs are balanced to fight one enemy, not a guild of 50. And late game content would need to be, well, made. At the moment, when you get to the late game in Elden Ring, you beat the game. That's it. The late game content in Elden Ring is New Game Plus. So obviously the later bosses and dungeons would need to be set up more like raids. That doesn't mean the 15-man group is going to fight the final boss, though for Radahn's fight that for sure needs to happen, but smaller groups and such. But with adjustments like these I mentioned, and I'm sure others, the main game of Elden Ring being implemented for a large-scale multiplayer experience would enhance it, at the very least for me. I personally play games to enjoy them with friends, share what we learn and what we're doing, and just have that community. And while I've really enjoyed single-player RPGs over the years, and I mean, I've really enjoyed them, I've played so many, there's still an aspect of those games that I feel like is empty with the fact that I can't enjoy as much with other players. And that's where MMOs, I think, really pick up that slack for me, and why when I see an amazing game like Elden Ring, I think it would be an amazing MMO. End of the day, a MMO that has its core setup like Elden Ring, or even specifically Elden Ring as an MMO, would be the greatest MMO ever, in my opinion. Taking everything great about Elden Ring and letting a multiplayer base go into it would check off all my boxes for what I look for in games. But I'm curious about what you think. Do you think an MMO like that would be good or not? Be sure to leave your comments down below and like and subscribe and all that. Till next time.